When my lawyer texted, "Call me immediately," as I was heading to my daughter's dinner, I thought it was about paperwork. What he told me made my blood run cold. The pot roast waiting on her table. The smile she'd have when I walked through that door. The documents hidden in her house with my forged signature. I had 12 minutes to decide. Confront her or become her next victim. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments section where you're watching from, so I'll know how far my story has gone. I was standing in front of my closet, holding up two shirts, the blue button-down or the gray sweater, when my phone lit up on the dresser. A text message from Greg Thompson. My lawyer doesn't text. In 20 years, the man has never sent me a text message. He calls. He emails. He sends certified letters when he's being formal, but he doesn't text. I picked up the phone. "Call me immediately." All caps, no punctuation, no explanation. My stomach dropped. I stared at those 3 words like they were written in a language I didn't understand. The air in my bedroom suddenly felt thinner. Outside, the Charlotte traffic hummed along like nothing had changed. But inside my apartment, everything had gone still. I'd just talked to Claire an hour ago. Her voice had been so bright on the phone. "Dad, come over for dinner tonight. I'm making pot roast, the one Mom used to make." She'd laughed, that easy laugh she's had since she was 7 years old. "I know it's your favorite. Be here at 7, okay?" I'd been excited. Hell, I'd been thrilled. My daughter wanted to cook for me, wanted to spend time with me. After the divorce, after all the years of splitting holidays and missing birthdays because of work, Claire had reached out. She wanted me there. And now Greg was texting me in all caps? My hands started to shake. I dropped the blue shirt on the bed and sat down hard on the edge of the mattress. The gray sweater fell to the floor. I didn't pick it up. Something was wrong. Greg Thompson doesn't panic. He's the kind of lawyer who stays calm when you're drowning in paperwork, when the IRS is breathing down your neck, when your ex-wife's attorney is threatening to take you back to court. He's steady, unshakable. But this text didn't sound steady. I looked at the clock on my nightstand. 6:18 p.m. I was supposed to leave for Claire's in 12 minutes. Her place in Dilworth was only a 15-minute drive. I'd already mapped it out. I'd even bought flowers from the Harris Teeter on the way home from work. Yellow roses, her favorite. They were sitting in a vase on my kitchen counter. My thumb hovered over Greg's name. Call him, I told myself. Just call him and this will all make sense. But I didn't want to call him. Because some part of me, some deep buried instinct, knew that once I made that call, everything would change. I pressed the green button anyway. Greg picked up on the first ring. "Damien," he said, and his voice had that careful, measured tone he uses in court, the tone that means bad news. "Don't go to Claire's tonight." The room tilted. "What are you talking about?" I gripped the edge of the mattress. "I'm leaving in 10 minutes." "I know," Greg said quietly. "That's exactly why I'm calling." "Don't go to Claire's tonight." The words hung in the air like smoke. I couldn't breathe around them. "Greg, what the hell are you talking about?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Claire invited me to dinner. I'm literally about to walk out the door." Silence on the other end. Not the comfortable silence of an old friend thinking. This was different. This was the silence of a man choosing his words very, very carefully. "I need you to sit down," Greg finally said. "I'm already sitting." "Good," he exhaled slowly. "Damien, I found something today, something I wasn't supposed to find. My heart was hammering now. Found what? I've been going through your brother's estate files, closing out Michael's accounts in Raleigh, settling the property transfer, standard stuff. But this afternoon, I came across some documents that they mentioned Claire. I stood up. I couldn't help it. What kind of documents? Bank records, emails, communications between Claire and... He stopped himself. Look, I can't get into all the details over the phone, but Damien, she's been planning something, and tonight is part of it. The room started spinning. Planning what? I demanded. Greg, you're not making any sense. Claire is my daughter. She invited me to dinner. She's making pot roast for Christ's sake. I know how this sounds. Do ya? I was pacing now, back and forth across my bedroom carpet. It sounds like you're telling me my daughter is... What? What are you saying? Greg's voice dropped lower. I'm saying that the timing is not a coincidence. Your brother died 6 weeks ago. Claire called you for dinner 3 days after I started going through his files. And the documents I found today? What documents? I almost shouted now. Bank transfers. Large ones. From accounts connected to Michael's estate to Claire. Dating back 8 months. I froze. 8 months? That was before Michael got sick, before the cancer diagnosis, before any of us knew he was dying. Why would Michael give Claire money? I asked, but even as I said it, something cold was forming in my chest. He didn't, Greg said. That's the problem. These transfers happened after his death. Someone with access to his accounts has been moving money, and the trail leads directly to Claire. My legs gave out. I sat back down on the bed, hard. That's impossible, I whispered. Claire wouldn't... She doesn't even know how to... There's more, Greg interrupted. I found email exchanges between Claire and... I can't identify yet. They're encrypted, but I got enough fragments to see a pattern. They're discussing you, Damien, your schedule, your routines, when you're alone. The yellow roses on my kitchen counter suddenly felt like a funeral arrangement. Tonight's dinner, I said slowly. I think you need to stay away from that house just for tonight. Let me dig deeper. Let me figure out what's really going on here. My phone buzzed against my ear. Another text. From Claire. Dad, are you on your way? Dinner's almost ready. The smiley face made my skin crawl. Damien, are you listening to me? Yeah, I said hoarsely. Good, because there's something else you need to know. He took a breath. She's been preparing for this for months. I sat there on my bed, phone still pressed to my ear, but I wasn't hearing Greg anymore. I was seeing Claire. Not the Claire who'd just texted me with a smiley face. Not the woman who'd been moving money from dead accounts and planning whatever this was. I was seeing Claire at 7 years old, standing in our backyard in Chapel Hill with grass stains on her knees and a gap-toothed smile. She'd been trying to catch fireflies in a mason jar that summer evening, her small hands cupped around the glass, her eyes wide with wonder every time the light blinked inside. Dad, look, I caught another one. I'd been grilling burgers. Her mother had been setting the picnic table. Claire was pure joy in a sundress. Make a wish, I'd told her when she finally released them all back into the dusk. She'd closed her eyes so tight her whole face scrunched up. What did you wish for? I'd asked. That we could stay like this forever, she'd whispered. God, I'd believed her. Damien, are you still there? Greg's voice yanked me back to the present, to my bedroom, to the cold reality that my daughter might be. I'm here, I said, but my voice cracked. I ended the call, told him I needed time to think. But I didn't want to think.
I wanted to remember. Claire at 10, bringing me breakfast in bed on Father's Day. Burnt toast and over-scrambled eggs, but she'd drawn a card with crayons. A stick figure of us holding hands. Best dad in the world, it said. I still had that card. It was in a box somewhere in my closet. Claire at 12, crying on the couch after her first soccer game loss. I'd held her while she sobbed into my shoulder, told her that losing builds character. She'd looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "You never lose, Dad. You're strong." I'd felt like a hero that day. Claire at 15, laughing so hard at my terrible jokes that milk came out of her nose at the dinner table. Her mother had scolded us both, but Claire and I had just looked at each other and laughed harder. These were the memories I'd built my entire understanding of my daughter on. These moments of pure, uncomplicated love. But then, unbidden, another memory surfaced. One I'd forgotten, or maybe one I'd buried. Claire at 16. We were at Uncle Michael's house in Raleigh for Thanksgiving. I'd walked past the study and heard voices. Claire and Michael, talking low, too low. I'd paused at the door. "You promise you won't tell Dad?" Claire had asked. "I promise," Michael had said. "This stays between us." Because if he knew, Claire's voice dropped to almost nothing, he'd never forgive me. I'd stood there in the hallway frozen, wanting to knock, wanting to ask what secret my daughter and my brother were keeping from me. But I hadn't. I'd told myself it was nothing, teenage stuff. Maybe she'd failed a test. Maybe she'd gotten into trouble at school. Whatever it was, Michael would help her handle it. I'd walked away. That was 9 years ago. And now Michael was dead, and Claire was moving his money, and I was standing in my bedroom wondering if I'd ever really known my daughter at all. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Claire. "Dad, you okay? You're usually here by now." I stared at those words until they blurred. What had she said to Michael that day? What promise had they made? And why did it suddenly feel like the answer was waiting for me in Dilworth at a dinner table set for two?
My laptop was already open on the kitchen table when Greg's email arrived. The subject line was blank. No greeting, no explanation, just an attachment labeled urgent, encrypted.zip. My hands were shaking so badly I had to type the password 3 times. Inside were 12 PDF files, 12 pieces of evidence that my daughter had been lying to me. The first document was a bank statement, not mine, at least not one I recognized, but my name was at the top. Damian Fisher, primary account holder. The account had been opened 14 months ago at a Wells Fargo branch in Raleigh. I'd never set foot in that branch. The balance showed $127,000. Then over the course of 6 months, a series of withdrawals, $15,000, $22,000, $18,000. All transfers to an account ending in 4739. I didn't recognize that number either. I opened the second file. It was a property deed, a house in Asheville purchased 8 months ago for $340,000. The buyer's name was listed as Claire Elizabeth Fisher, my daughter. But the down payment, $85,000, had come from that Raleigh account, the one with my name on it. My chest tightened. I clicked on the third document, a loan application for a business line of credit, $200,000 approved. The business was called Fisher Consulting Solutions, LLC. I'd never heard of it, but there at the bottom of the application was my signature. Except it wasn't. I stared at that signature for a full minute. It looked like mine. The loops and slants were almost perfect, but the pressure was wrong. The way the F curved was too smooth, too practiced. Someone had copied my signature. Someone who'd had years to study it. My phone rang. Greg. "You're looking at the files," he said, not a question.
Yeah. My voice sounded hollow. Greg, I didn't sign any of this. I didn't open that account. I don't own property in Asheville. I know. Then why is my name? Because Claire put it there. And she's been very, very careful about it. The account was opened with a copy of your driver's license and social security number. The signatures match up well enough that the bank never questioned them. The property deed was notarized by someone in Raleigh. I'm still tracking down who. I felt sick. How long has she been doing this? I asked. Based on what I've found, at least a year, maybe longer. Greg paused. Damien, there's more. Keep looking. I didn't want to keep looking, but I clicked on the 5th file anyway. It was an insurance policy. Life insurance. On me. $500,000. The beneficiary was Claire Elizabeth Fisher. The policy had been taken out 9 months ago. Jesus Christ, I whispered. Keep going, Greg said. The 6th document was an email, sent from Claire's personal account to an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, Timeline Confirmation. I read the body of the email twice before my brain could process the words. Everything's in place. Property transferred, accounts established, insurance active. He doesn't suspect anything. Dinner is set for November 5th. Once he signs the final documents, we move to phase 2. He'll never see it coming. The date on the email was October 29th, 1 week ago. Damien? Greg's voice was distant now, like he was speaking from underwater. Are you still with me? I couldn't answer. I clicked on the 6th file with numb fingers. It was another document, a power of attorney form, granting Claire full legal authority over my financial and medical decisions in the event of my incapacitation. At the bottom of the page was a signature line. My signature. Except I'd never signed it. But someone had, and the ink looked fresh.
I closed the laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes. I needed to go back. Back to this morning, before Greg's text, before the files, before everything shattered. Back to when I still believed my daughter loved me. It had been 11:47 a.m. when my phone rang. I'd been in a meeting at the office in downtown Charlotte, half listening to quarterly projections, when Claire's name lit up my screen. I'd stepped out into the hallway to take the call. Hey, sweetheart, I'd said, smiling before I even heard her voice. Dad! She'd sounded bright, happy. I know this is last minute, but are you free tonight? Tonight? I checked my mental calendar. Yeah, I think so. What's up? I want to make you dinner. Her voice had that warmth in it, that tone she used to have when she was little and wanted to surprise me. My heart had swelled. Claire, you don't have to. I want to, she interrupted. I've been thinking about it all week. I want to make Mom's pot roast, the one you always loved. I'd felt my throat tighten. Her mother's pot roast. We hadn't talked about that recipe in years, not since the divorce. That sounds perfect, I'd said quietly. 7 o'clock? I'll be there. There'd been a pause then, just a beat. And in that pause, I'd heard something I couldn't quite name. A breath. A hesitation. Dad? She'd said, and her voice had softened. I love you. You know that, right? Of course I do, sweetheart. I love you too. Good, she'd said, and then she'd hung up. I'd stood in that hallway for a moment, holding my phone, feeling grateful, feeling blessed that my daughter still wanted me in her life. I'd gone back into the meeting and told my team I was leaving early. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with those files still open on my laptop, I replayed that conversation in my head. I've been thinking about it all week. A week. She'd been planning this dinner for a week. The same week Greg had started going through Michael's estate files. Just the two of us.
No mention of her boyfriend, no mention of friends, just me, alone. I love you. You know that, right? Why had she said that? Why had she needed to confirm it? And that pause, that tiny hesitation before she'd spoken my name, what had she been thinking in that silence? I pulled up her text messages throughout the day. 1:34 p.m. Can't wait for tonight, Dad. 3:52 p.m. Just put the roast in the oven. House smells amazing. 5:41 p.m. Heading to the store to grab some wine. Red okay? 6:18 p.m. Dad, are you on your way? Dinner's almost ready. 6:47 p.m. Dad, to you okay? You're usually here by now. Every message was perfect. Cheerful. Normal. Too normal. I scrolled back further, looked at our text history from the past month. Before today, the last time Claire had texted me was 3 weeks ago. Busy this weekend, maybe next month? That was it. One message in 3 weeks. And now, suddenly, she was texting me every 2 hours, using emojis, asking if I was okay. She was tracking me, making sure I was coming, making sure I would be exactly where she wanted me at exactly 7 p.m. My phone buzzed again, another text from Claire. Dad, I'm getting worried. Please call me. I stared at those words. She sounded concerned. She sounded like a daughter who was worried about her father. But now that I knew, now that I'd seen the files and the forged signatures and the life insurance policy, I could hear something else beneath the words. She sounded too calm, like someone who'd practiced this conversation in her head 100 times, like someone who knew exactly what was supposed to happen next, and I wasn't following the script.
I grabbed my keys. Greg had told me not to go. The files had told me not to go. Every rational cell in my body was screaming at me to stay home, lock my doors, and let my lawyer handle this. But she was still my daughter, and I needed to look her in the eyes. The rain started the moment I pulled out of my apartment complex. Not a drizzle, a full Charlotte downpour that turned the streets into rivers and made the traffic lights blur into smears of red and green. My windshield wipers beat a rhythm that matched my pulse. Fast, frantic, loud, thump, 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 thump. I took Providence Road toward Dilworth, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. What was I doing? The smart thing would be to turn around, to go to the police, to let them see the forged signatures and the fraudulent accounts and the life insurance policy with my name on it. But what would I tell them? That my daughter invited me to dinner? That I was afraid of pot roast? I didn't have proof she'd done anything illegal tonight, only that she'd been planning something. And planning wasn't a crime. Not yet. A horn blared. I drifted into the left lane without signaling. I corrected, but my mind wasn't on the road. It was in that house in Dilworth, in Claire's kitchen, at that dinner table set for 2. What was waiting for me there? The rain hammered harder. The streetlights cast orange halos through the water streaming down my windows. Everything looked distorted, unreal. Maybe I'm wrong, I thought. Maybe Claire had been helping Michael with something before he died. Maybe the money transfers were legitimate. Maybe the signatures were a misunderstanding. Maybe I was a paranoid old man who'd let his lawyer fill his head with conspiracy theories. But then I remembered that email. He'll never see it coming. My daughter's words. Her plan. I checked my rearview mirror. Headlights. 2 white orbs cutting through the rain. maybe 50 feet back. I turned right onto East Boulevard. The headlights turned with me. Coincidence. This was a main road. Lots of people drove this route. I switched lanes. So did the car behind me. My heart rate kicked up. I slowed down, dropping to 30 in a 35 zone. The car behind me slowed too, maintaining distance, not passing. Stop it, I told myself. You're being paranoid. But my hands were shaking on the wheel. I made another turn, this time onto a residential street I didn't need to take, a detour. The headlights followed. Half a mile, then a full mile. I watched those lights in my mirror, my breath coming shorter now. The rain made it hard to see what kind of car it was. Dark, sedan maybe, North Carolina plates, but I couldn't make out the numbers. We passed 3 side streets. The car didn't turn, didn't pass, just stayed there, 50 feet back, like a shadow I couldn't shake. 2 miles. That's how long it followed me before I finally pulled back onto the main road toward Dilworth. When I looked in the mirror again, the headlights were gone. Just gone. Like they'd never been there at all. I sat at a red light, hands trembling, rain pounding the roof of my car like fists. She knows I'm coming, I thought. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I was driving to confront my daughter or driving into a trap. I parked 3 houses down. The rain had softened to a drizzle, leaving everything slick and reflective under the streetlights. Claire's house was the blue Craftsman on the corner, the one with the white trim and the porch light that glowed warm and inviting. It looked like home. It looked like a trap. I killed the engine, but didn't get out. Not yet. My watch said 6:54 p.m. 6 minutes early. 6 minutes to sit in the dark and watch. Through the front window, I could see movement. The curtains were sheer enough that shapes passed behind them like actors on a stage. Claire moved through the living room, her silhouette unmistakable. That was her, the way she walked, the tilt of her head. My daughter. But she wasn't alone. There was a second shadow in there, taller, broader shoulders. A man. My chest constricted. I leaned forward, squinting through the rain-spotted windshield. The man moved closer to the window, and for just a moment, the light caught his profile. Dark hair, maybe 35, wearing a button-down shirt. I'd never seen him before in my life. Who the hell was that? Claire had never mentioned a boyfriend, never posted about anyone on social media, not that she posted much anymore. In all our conversations over the past year, she'd never once said she was seeing someone. So why was there a strange man in her house on the night she'd invited me to a private dinner? Just the 2 of us, she had said. I watched as the man gestured toward something in the kitchen. Claire nodded and disappeared from view. He stayed at the window, looking down at his phone, his face illuminated by the blue screen glow. He was comfortable there. Too comfortable. This wasn't a casual guest. He knew the layout of her house, knew where things were. My hands started to sweat. I pulled out my phone and texted Greg, "There's a man in her house. Do you know who she's been associating with?" 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "Working on it. Do not go in there alone." But I was already opening my car door. The cold air hit me like a slap. I stood on the wet pavement, rain misting against my face, staring at that warm yellow light spilling from Claire's windows. I took 1 step toward the house, then another. Through the window, I saw Claire return to the living room. She was carrying 2 wine glasses. She handed one to the man and they stood there together, close enough that their shoulders almost touched.
He said something. She laughed. That laugh, I knew that laugh. That was the same laugh she had at 12, at 15, at every birthday and holiday when things were simple and good. But there was something different about it now, something rehearsed. The man took a sip of wine. Then he leaned in close to Claire's ear and whispered something I couldn't hear. She went still, not scared, not surprised, just focused. She whispered something back and he nodded slowly. Then he glanced toward the front door, toward me, though he couldn't see me in the dark, and checked his watch. Claire set down her wineglass on the mantel. Her movements were deliberate now, careful. The man put his arm around her shoulders, not romantic, not comforting, strategic, like a coach preparing an athlete before a big game. And Claire, my daughter, my little girl who used to catch fireflies and make me burnt toast, tilted her head toward the door I was supposed to walk through in 3 minutes. She nodded once. The man squeezed her shoulder, and they both smiled.
My phone vibrated in my hand. Greg. I ducked back toward my car, away from the porch light's reach, and answered. "Don't go in," he said immediately. No greeting, just urgency. "There's someone else in there," I whispered. "A man. I don't know who." "I do." Greg's voice was tight. "Damien, I found something. On Michael's phone." I froze halfway to my car door. "What?" "Your brother kept his old phone in a desk drawer. I was going through his personal effects and found it plugged in, still charged. He had a recording app, voice memos." He paused. "There's one from 3 months ago. You need to hear it." The rain picked up again, drumming against the car roof. I climbed into the driver's seat and shut the door, sealing myself in darkness. I said, "Send it to me." He said, "Already did. Check your messages." My hands were shaking as I opened the audio file. The timestamp read July 18th, 9:47 p.m. I pressed play. Static at first. Then Michael's voice, weak and raspy. The cancer had already taken most of his strength by then. "I shouldn't be recording this. But if something happens, someone needs to know." A cough, long and wet. "Claire came to see me today. She brought someone with her, a man named Derek Sutton. Said he was a financial consultant." My blood went cold. Derek Sutton. That name. I'd seen it before, on one of the documents Greg had sent me, the notary signature on the property deed. "They want me to help them with something," Michael continued, his voice fading in and out. "They showed me documents, bank accounts, property transfers, all with Damien's name on them. But Damien didn't sign them. I know my brother's signature. These are forgeries." I gripped the phone so hard I thought the screen would crack. "Claire told me it's for his own good, that Damien's getting older, making bad decisions. She said she needs to protect him from himself, that she's doing this out of love." A bitter laugh from my dying brother. But I saw the way she looked at Sutton when she said it, the way they smiled at each other. This isn't about protection. This is about money. My money. Damien's money. Everything we built. Another cough. Longer this time. She asked me to help. To give her access to my accounts before I die. Said it would make the estate transfer smoother. Said Damien would never have to know. Silence. Then a whisper. I told her no. My eyes burned. She didn't like that. Sutton didn't either. When they left, Claire turned back at the door. She looked at me like I was already dead, like I was just an obstacle.
Michael's breathing grew labored. "If you're hearing this, it means something happened to me, or something's about to happen to Damien. Claire's planning something. I don't know what, but it involves a dinner. She kept mentioning a dinner." My heart stopped. "She told Sutton." Michael coughed again, struggling. "She told him he'll sign everything over after dinner, once he's relaxed, once he trusts me again." The audio crackled. "Damien, if you ever hear this, don't go to that dinner. Don't." The audio cut out. I sat in the dark car, rain hammering the windows, staring at the phone in my hand. Claire's voice echoed in my head. "He'll sign everything over after dinner." I looked up at her house. Through the window I could see her and Derek Sutton standing together, checking their watches again, waiting. My watch read 7:09 p.m. 2 minutes until I was supposed to walk through that door. 2 minutes until I was supposed to sign my life away.
I knocked at exactly 7 o'clock. 3 measured raps on the blue door. My hand steady, even though everything inside me was screaming to run. But I needed to see this through. I needed to look my daughter in the eye and know if any part of the girl I raised was still in there. Footsteps approached from inside. Light. Quick! The door swung open. "Dad!" Claire's smile was radiant. Perfect. She wore a cream sweater and dark jeans. Casual. Comfortable, like we'd done this 100 times before. "You made it!" I was starting to worry. She hugged me before I could react. Her arms around my shoulders, her perfume familiar. The same vanilla scent she'd worn since college. For one terrible second, I almost believed this was real. Come in," she pulled me inside, taking my coat. "You're soaking wet. The rain's really coming down, huh?" The house was warm, smelled like pot roast and rosemary, just like she'd promised, just like home. "Smells amazing," I said, and my voice sounded normal, calm. I was a better actor than I thought. Derek Sutton emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Up close, he was younger than I'd guessed. Clean cut, expensive watch, the kind of smile that belonged on a real estate billboard. "Mr. Fisher," he said, extending his hand. "Derek Sutton, I've heard so much about you." I shook his hand. Firm grip, confident. "Funny," I said. "Claire's never mentioned you." A flicker of something crossed Claire's face, but she recovered instantly. "Derek's been helping me with some investment planning," she said smoothly, hanging my coat in the closet. "I wanted to surprise you, show you what I've been working on." Investment planning. I felt the weight of my phone in my pocket. Michael's recording still playing in my head. "He'll sign everything over after dinner." "That's thoughtful," I said. We moved to the dining room. The table was set beautifully. White tablecloth, real china, candles flickering in crystal holders. 3 place settings. 3. She'd planned for Sutton all along. Sit," she urged, gesturing to the head of the table. "You're the guest of honor." I sat. Sutton took the chair to my right. Claire disappeared into the kitchen. "So," Sutton said, leaning back casually, "Claire tells me you worked in logistics for 30 years. That's impressive." 32 years, I corrected. Right. He smiled that billboard smile again. "Must have built up quite the retirement fund." There it was. Not even 5 minutes in, and we were already talking about money. "I do okay," I said carefully. Claire returned with the pot roast on a platter. It looked perfect.
Smelled perfect. She served me first, her hand steady, her smile never wavering. "I hope it tastes like Mom's," she said softly. I used her old recipe card. I stared at the meat on my plate, at the carrots and potatoes glistening with gravy. How many times had I eaten this meal? How many Sunday dinners at the kitchen table with Claire's mother before everything fell apart? "It looks exactly right," I said. We ate in near silence. Small talk about the weather, about traffic, about nothing that mattered. But underneath it all, I could feel the tension coiling tighter. Every smile too bright, every laugh too quick. Claire kept glancing at Sutton. He kept glancing at his watch. They were waiting for something. Dessert came, apple pie with vanilla ice cream. Claire cut me an enormous slice. "Dad," she said, setting it in front of me, "before you go, there's something I want you to see." She reached behind her chair and produced a manila envelope, thick, official-looking. She set it on the table between us. "You'll want to look at this after dessert," she said, her voice suddenly softer, almost sad. "It's important. It's about your future." My future. I stared at that envelope like it was a loaded gun. "What is it?" I asked. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Security. For both of us."
I need to use the bathroom, I said, pushing back from the table. Claire's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Of course. Down the hall, first door on the left." I grabbed the envelope. Her eyes followed my hand. "Just want to look at it while I forced a smile. "You know me. Can't wait." She nodded slowly. "Take your time, Dad." The bathroom door clicked shut behind me. I locked it and pressed my back against the wood, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The envelope was heavier than I had expected. Official, legal weight. I tore it open. Inside were documents. 15, maybe 20 pages stapled together. The letterhead at the top read Thompson and Associates Estate Planning. Not Greg Thompson. A different firm entirely. My hands started shaking as I read the first page. Last Will and Testament of Damien Michael Fisher. No! I flipped to the second page. Third. Fourth. Every page laid out the same nightmare in legal language that made my stomach turn. All assets, all accounts, all property, everything I'd spent 32 years building, transferred to Claire Elizabeth Fisher upon my death or incapacitation. Sole beneficiary. Complete control. And there, at the bottom of page 7, was my signature. Perfect. Precise. Exactly the way I'd been signing documents for decades. Except I'd never signed this. I kept reading, my vision blurring. Power of attorney, signed. Medical directive, signed. Trust dissolution, signed. Bank account transfers, signed. Every document bore my name in ink that looked fresh, recent, like I'd sat down with a notary last week and agreed to hand my entire life over to my daughter. But I hadn't. I'd never even seen these papers before tonight. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. The bathroom walls felt like they were closing in. How long had she been planning this? How many times had she practiced my signature until she could replicate it perfectly? I thought of every birthday card I'd ever signed, every Christmas check, every legal document I'd mailed from my apartment in Charlotte. She had years to study my handwriting, years to perfect the forgery. And now she had everything. Or she would. As soon as I signed whatever was waiting at that dinner table, as soon as I agreed to these terms while comfortable and trusting, surrounded by pot roast and apple pie and the ghost of her mother's memory. I flipped to the last page. Certification of Mental Competency Assessment, dated today, November 5th, 2025. It stated that I, Damien Fisher, had undergone a voluntary cognitive evaluation and been deemed of sound mind and body when signing these documents. The evaluating physician was listed as Dr. Marcus Chen. I'd never heard that name in my life. Below the assessment was another signature line, blank, waiting. This was the final piece, the one thing she still needed. She needed me to sign this certification tonight, to prove I'd willingly handed everything over, to make it all legal and uncontestable. And if I refused? I thought about the life insurance policy, $500,000, and about the carefully timed dinner invitation, and about Derek Sutton waiting in the other room with his expensive watch and his billboard smile, and about the man Michael had tried to warn me about before he died. If something happens to me, or something's about to happen to Damien. My brother didn't die of cancer. The thought hit me like cold water. Michael had told Claire no, he'd refused to help her, and 3 weeks later he was gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Greg. Police are 10 minutes away. Keep her talking. Do not sign anything. I stared at the documents spread across the bathroom counter, at my forged signature repeated over and over like a mockery of everything I'd built, at my daughter's name listed as sole beneficiary of my death. A knock at the door made me jump. "Dad?" Claire's voice was soft, concerned. "Are you okay in there?" I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Pale, sweating, terrified. "Yeah," I called back, my voice cracking. "Just reading." "Good," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere."
I walked back to the dining room with the envelope in my hand. Claire and Derek looked up simultaneously. Their smiles froze when they saw my face. I didn't sit down. I stood at the head of the table and dropped the papers in front of my half-eaten pie. "Interesting reading," I said quietly. Claire's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. A calculation. "Dad, don't." My voice came out harder than I intended. "Don't call me that right now." Derek started to stand. I held up my hand. "Sit down, Mr. Sutton. You're going to want to hear this too." He sat, but his hand moved toward his phone. "I know about the accounts," I said, looking directly at Claire. "The property in Asheville, the business line of credit, the life insurance policy." I paused. "I know about Michael." Her face went pale. "Dad, let me explain." "You forged my signature," I pointed at the documents, "on every single page. How long did you practice? How many birthday cards did you study?" Claire's jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." I pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. "Tell me why my daughter, the girl I raised, the girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during Panthers games, tell me why she's been stealing from me for over a year." "Stealing?" She voice rose, sharp and bitter. "You think this is stealing? What would you call it?" "Justice." She stood up now, her hands flat on the table. "I'm calling it justice, Dad. For 16 years of broken promises, for every birthday you missed, every recital you were too busy for, every weekend you chose work over me." My chest tightened. "Claire, you left us." Her voice cracked. "When you and Mom divorced, you didn't just leave her. You left me. You moved to that apartment in Charlotte and started this whole new life, and I was just leftover, an obligation you checked off twice a month." "That's not fair." She laughed, but there were tears in her eyes now. "You want to talk about fair? You paid child support, you sent cards, you showed up when the custody agreement required it, but you were never really there, Dad. You were never mine." I felt something breaking inside me. I tried. After the divorce, I tried so hard to what? To be a father? She wiped her eyes roughly. "You tried to be convenient. You tried to not feel guilty.
but you never tried to actually be in my life." Derek touched her arm. She shook him off. "When Uncle Michael got sick, he told me something. He said you built your whole life around work because you were afraid of failing at the things that actually mattered: family, connection, love." I thought of Michael's recording, his warning. Michael tried to protect me from you. Michael felt sorry for you, Claire shot back. "Just like I did, until I realized something." She leaned forward. "You owe me. For every missed moment, for every year I waited for you to choose me. You owe me everything you built while you were ignoring me." "So this is revenge?" I asked quietly. "You forge documents, steal money, plan to, what? Have me declared incompetent? Or worse?" Her silence was answer enough. "You're my daughter," I said, and my voice broke. "How did we get here? You got us here, the day you stopped being my father." Derek cleared his throat. "Mr. Fisher, if we could just—" "No." I stood up, pushing the papers toward Claire. "You want everything I have? You want me to sign my life away because I wasn't the father you needed?" She met my eyes, waiting. "You're wrong about me," I said slowly. "I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. I missed things I can never get back. But I never stopped being your father. I never stopped loving you." Her hand trembled on the table. "But you're right about what comes next." Claire's eyes widened. Derek's hand moved toward his phone again. I heard sirens in the distance. "Because what comes next," I continued, "isn't forgiveness, and it isn't revenge either."
What Claire didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I'd started recording the moment I returned from the bathroom. My phone sat in my shirt pocket, voice memo app running, capturing every word she'd said, every confession, every justification for fraud and forgery, and whatever else she'd been planning for tonight. The sirens were getting louder now, close enough that Derek finally stood up, moving toward the window. "Claire," he said quietly, "we should—" "Sit down," she snapped, her eyes never leaving mine. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table between us. The recording app glowed on the screen, timestamp showing 12 minutes and 43 seconds. Her face went white. "You recorded this?" She voice was barely a whisper. "Every word. From the moment you told me I owed you everything. The moment you admitted to the forgeries. The moment you confirmed you've been planning this for months." Derek's hand was shaking as he grabbed his keys from the counter. "I'm leaving." "No, you're not," I said calmly. "Greg called the police 20 minutes ago. They know about the forged documents. They know about the accounts. They know about Michael." Claire's chair scraped backward. "Michael died of cancer." "Did he?" I met her eyes. "Because I'm starting to wonder. He refused to help you in July. By August, he was dead. You inherited access to his estate, and you started moving money the same week he was buried. You can't prove—" "I have his recording, the one he made 3 months ago, where he names you and Derek Sutton specifically, where he says you looked at him like he was already dead." The color drained from her face completely now. The sirens were right outside. Red and blue lights flickered through the curtains, painting the walls in flashes of accusation. Derek bolted for the back door. I heard it slam, heard his footsteps on the deck, heard shouting from outside as officers intercepted him. Claire stood frozen at the table, staring at those flashing lights like she couldn't comprehend what they meant. "Dad," she said, and her voice sounded young suddenly. Small, like the little girl who used to catch fireflies. "Dad, please, we can fix this." "No." I stood up slowly. "We can't." The front door burst open. 2 police officers, followed by Greg Thompson, in his lawyer's suit, looking grim and relieved all at once. "Damien," Greg said. "You okay?" I nodded,
not trusting my voice. One of the officers approached Claire. "Claire Elizabeth Fisher." She looked at me, just looked at me, and in her eyes I saw everything. The little girl I'd failed, the woman who'd chosen revenge over redemption, the daughter I was about to lose all over again. "You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit financial exploitation," the officer continued, pulling out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." Claire's eyes never left mine as they read her rights, as they cuffed her hands behind her back, as they led her past the dining table still set with her mother's china and the pot roast that had gone cold. At the door, she stopped, turned back. "I loved you, even when I hated you, even when I was planning all of this. Part of me still loved you. I know. That's what makes this so much worse." They took her out into the night, into the flashing lights and rain and the end of everything we'd ever been to each other. Greg put his hand on my shoulder. "We need to get you out of here. Give a statement. Start the legal process." I looked around Claire's house. At the table she'd set, the envelope full of forged documents, the life she'd tried to steal from me. And I thought about Michael's last words on that recording. "Don't go to that dinner." But I had gone, and now we both had to live with what came next. The rain had stopped by the time they put her in the police car. I stood on the porch of her blue Craftsman house, Greg beside me, watching as the officer guided Claire into the back seat. Her hands were cuffed behind her, her cream sweater damp from the mist, her hair falling in her face. She was crying. Not the quiet, dignified tears of someone accepting consequences. These were the raw, desperate sobs of a child who'd been caught doing something unforgivable and couldn't understand why forgiveness wasn't automatic. Through the rain-streaked window of the patrol car, she looked at me. "Dad!" Her voice was muffled, but I could still hear it, still hear the pain. "Dad, please! I can explain. I can make this right. Please don't do this. Please!" The officer started the engine. "Dad!" She was screaming now, her face pressed against the glass. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just let me explain. You have to understand why I—" The car pulled away from the curb. I watched those red taillights disappear down the tree-lined street of Dilworth, carrying my daughter away from me. Maybe for months. Maybe for years. Maybe forever. Greg touched my shoulder. "Damien, we should go inside. You need to give a formal statement and—" "I need a minute," I said quietly. He nodded and stepped back into the house, leaving me alone on the porch. Alone with the echo of her voice. "I'm sorry. You have to understand." But I did understand. That was the worst part. I understood that she'd spent years feeling abandoned, that every missed birthday had stacked up like evidence of my failure, that every business trip I'd chosen over a school play had convinced her she didn't matter. And maybe she was right about some of it. Maybe I had been too consumed with work, too focused on rebuilding my life after the divorce, too determined not to fail financially that I'd failed her emotionally instead. But understanding didn't excuse what she'd done. Understanding didn't erase the forged signatures and the stolen money and the life insurance policy with my name on it. It didn't bring Michael back or answer the terrible question of whether my brother had really died of cancer or something darker. Understanding just made it hurt more. Inside, Derek Sutton was being processed by another officer. Through the window, I could see him sitting at Claire's dining table, the same table where we'd eaten pot roast an hour ago, signing documents and looking small. The manila envelope still sat where I'd dropped it. All those forged papers, all that careful planning. I thought about Claire at 7, wishing we could stay like this forever. I thought about Claire at 16, whispering secrets to Michael that I never learned. I thought about Claire at 26, calling me this morning with warmth in her voice and murder in her heart. Which one was real? Which one was my daughter? Maybe they all were. Maybe that was the tragedy. That love and resentment had grown together like vines around the same tree, choking each other until neither could breathe. Greg emerged from the house carrying the envelope. "Evidence," he said. "The police will need all of it." "I didn't sign anything," I said. "I know." He looked at me carefully. "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because I wasn't okay. I might never be okay again. But I was alive. I was free. I still had everything I'd worked for. Except the one thing I'd wanted most. 20 minutes later, I sat alone in my car, parked down the street from Claire's house. The police had finished processing the scene. The lights were off now. The house dark. Empty. Like it'd never been a home all along. Just a stage set for a performance that ended in handcuffs. I turned the key in the ignition but didn't drive. Just sat there, watching the last patrol car pull away, its lights fading into the Charlotte night. My phone buzzed, a text from Greg. "Go home. Get some rest. We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes." Tomorrow. What did tomorrow look like when your daughter was in jail for trying to destroy you? When every memory you had was poisoned by what you now knew she was capable of? I thought about going home to my apartment, setting the table for one, microwaving something forgettable. And I knew that in somewhere in that familiar routine, I'd hear her voice again. "I'm making pot roast, Dad. Just the two of us." I still hear her voice when I set the table. I just can't decide which hurts more. Losing her, or finally knowing her.
So, here's my question for you. Was I right to handle it this way? Tell me in the comments below. What would you have done in my position? If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more real-life tales, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Because trust me, there's so much more on this channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next life story.